various lines, may build upon it conflicting philosophies, may limit, modify, overstress, understress styles of the knowledge, deduce from it truth or error, but our intellectual variations and imperfect statements make no difference to the ultimate fact that if we push thought and experience to their end, this is the knowledge in which they terminate. The object of a yoga of spiritual knowledge can be nothing else than this eternal reality, this self, this Brahman, this transcendence that dwells over all and in all and is manifest yet concealed in the individual, manifest yet disguised in the universe.
So, let us see what he is saying. I will read the summary so that we get an idea of what he is saying, and then if necessary we will look at each sentence. So, he has been talking about the individual and the cosmos, and now he is talking of the third level, the Supreme Spirit, the Transcendent. The individual, the cosmic, and the transcendent. So now the transcendent. This third level, okay, the Supreme Spirit, the Transcendent, Absolute, is the final, the last knowledge. It is transcendent, aloof, yet has consequences in the lower levels, the individual as well as the universe. It is not something which is absolutely, totally cut off from the universe and the individual, as sometimes it is interpreted. So Swami is saying it's not like that. There are consequences, there are connections. Apparently it looks as though it has no connection with the... When you experience the transcendent, you feel the physical world is quite different. Okay? You have the experience of Purusha, and Prakriti has nothing to do with the Purusha. That's what you feel. But Swami is warning you that it's not exactly like that. There are connections, there are consequences in the lower levels. This consciousness is so vast, so many-sided, so far from beyond human mind, that it may posit many theories, many viewpoints. It lends itself to many diverse ways of looking and understanding it. That errors, imperfections and variations are all possible. Okay? So, there you are. The variation that the physical world is absolutely not at all in the attention of the Supreme Spirit, the Transcendent, is not always correct. That's what is being pointed out. So, understating, overstressing aspects, resulting in conflicting philosophies, all this is possible. But all this makes no difference to the everlasting, immutable existence. All spiritual knowledge must end with this last final consciousness. The Brahman, the Self, the Transcendent. You may wonder that the Self is at the cosmic level and the Transcendent is at the third level. So why is Swami saying the Brahman, the Self and the Transcendent? Remember that all these planes of consciousness, they are merging one into the other, like the rainbow colors. They are not categorically, there are no clear borders between them. Like India and Pakistan, there is a border. Like they are more like in Europe. Okay, the borders are there, but they are porous. If you are a citizen of one country in Europe, you can drive your car through only by showing your you just show your identity and then go on. Okay, so it's like that. That's why the Transcendent is also the Brahman. Normally when you use the word Brahman, it refers to the cosmic level, the Self. Okay, and also there is another truth. At the lower levels, you can have the knowledge of the higher by reflection. Okay, it's a reduced truth, but you can have a knowledge of the higher place. That is exactly how Swami has written so much about the supermind. He was there in supermind for short periods of time, but he could not live there. Because if he had lived there permanently, then many things would have happened. Okay? So that's what is being said. Now, the last thing, it is transcendent, yet manifests and hides in the individual as well as the universe. So there you are. If it is transcendent really, in every sense of the word, how can it manifest in the universe and how can it hide in the individual also? That's exactly what Sri Ranga means by it has got consequences in the cosmos as well as the individual. Okay? So, this is what it is. A very small para. We'll read that and with this background we should be able to understand what is saying. The consciousness of the transcendent absolute. The transcendent absolute is often spoken of as Chit Ghana. It is the divine looking not outwards towards the universe but inwards towards only himself. So, when a human being experiences the transcendent, he feels that has nothing to do with the universe. Okay? So, that's why it is absolute. The transcendent absolute, with its consequence in individual and universe, is the last, the eternal knowledge. Our minds may deal with it on various lines. You can have many theories. The human being can experience this, but human beings being after all limited, his interpretations of the transcendent can vary. Okay? The eternal knowledge. Our minds may deal with it on various lines, may build upon it conflicting philosophies. For instance, the Advaita philosophy says that the transcendent is the Purushottama and it has got power and it's got everything. It's got consciousness, power and ananda and everything. There is no contradiction. But Buddhistic philosophy says it's a nihil. So there are so many different interpretations of it because of the human being. But that makes no difference to the transcendent itself. It remains exactly what it is. That's what Swami is pointing out. Our minds may deal with it on various lines, may build upon it conflicting philosophies, may limit, modify, overstress, understress sides of the knowledge. Deduce from it truth or error, even that is possible. Okay. But our intellectual variations and imperfect statements make no difference to the ultimate fact that if we push thought and experience to their end, this is the knowledge in which they terminate. The object of a yoga of spiritual knowledge can be nothing else than this eternal reality, this self, this Brahman, this transcendent, that dwells over all and in all and is manifest yet concealed in the individual. So the Supreme Purushottama is there. In fact, the Gita says, Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hriddeshe Tishtati. So the Ishvara, the Supreme Lord, is there in men, okay, manifested, but disguised. Okay. It is covered up by many, many layers. Okay. Layers of consciousness, layers of substance, layers of power, everything. We go to the next para. The culmination of the path of knowledge need not necessarily entail extinction of our world existence. So who will read? Jishnu, we have not read for a long time. Read the passage if you have the text.
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead. The culmination.
The culmination of the path of knowledge need not necessarily entail extinction of our world existence. For the Supreme, to whom we assimilate ourselves, the Absolute, the Transcendent, into whom we enter, has always the complete and ultimate consciousness for which we are seeking, and yet he supplies by it his play in the world. Neither are we compelled to believe that our world existence ends because by attaining to knowledge its our object or consummation is fulfilled, and therefore there is nothing more for us here afterwards. For what we gain at first, with its release and immeasurable silence, and quietude is only the eternal self-realization by the individual in the essence of his conscious being. There will still remain on that foundation, unannulled by the silence, one with the release and freedom, the infinitely proceeding self-fulfillment of Brahma. Is a dynamic divine manifestation in the individual and by its presence, example and action in others and in the universe at large, the work which the great ones remain to do. Our dynamic self-fulfillment cannot be worked out so long as we remain in the egoistic consciousness, in the mind's candlelit darkness, in the bondage. Our present limited consciousness can only be a field of preparation. It can consummate nothing, for all that it manifests is marred through and through by an ego-ridden ignorance and error. The true and divine self-fulfillment of Brahma in the manifestation is only possible on the foundation of the Brahman consciousness and therefore through the acceptance of life by the liberated soul, the Jivan Mukta.
Okay, a very interesting para, and Surendra is talking from his own spiritual experience point of view. Okay, he is also implying. We'll see what he means. What is he implying? We'll see. He is implying that the other philosophies, the Mayavadi philosophy, the Jnana path, and the other path, that once you realize the divine, you have nothing more to do with the world, and there is no need for rebirth. Okay, in India for a long time, it was rebirth is a curse. Coming down to the physical world is a curse. Why? Because you are bound to have suffering, you are bound to have problems, and you are bound to be in falsehood and ignorance. So once you escape, that's the end of the journey for you, for the soul. But Sri is contradicting that very strongly. Okay, I read each sentence. The culmination of the path of knowledge need not necessarily entail extinction of our world existence. This is the answer to Buddhism and Mayavada. That once you reach the Brahman consciousness, the world is extinguished. That is nirvana. The reality of the physical world is extinguished. The experience is real. Even Srivamda had the experience. Okay? In one letter to Dilip Kumar Roy, which is normally used by, at least I used to use it, to show you what the Brahman consciousness is. There is absolutely no emotion, no thought, no movement, no power. Only freedom and infinity, sense of infinity, liberation. That's the only experience that you have. And it is absolutely featureless. You cannot explain in any way. So Srivamda is saying that that is not the only experience possible. Even when you go, the culmination of the path of knowledge is the self, the Brahman consciousness. Need not necessarily entail extinction of our world existence. The world need not disappear. You can continue to exist there. In Life Divine also he says in one place that the going to the self has got three consequences. One, and normally it is like that the physical world turns out to be unreal. It's only shadows. Okay? There is no reality to it. Only shadows. That's one experience. The other experience is that if you are in the self, you can have a cosmic consciousness. In other words, cosmic consciousness means you are one with the universe. You are one with the cosmos. That's the experience of yogis who extend their consciousness to everything. So if somebody else is suffering, you will feel the suffering. But if somebody else is happy, you will feel this happiness if you are identified with the person. You remember the experience of the yogi who experienced the lashes of the whip on the animal very far away from him on his own back. So that's a cosmic consciousness. So that's the second possibility in the self. The third possibility is what happened to Srivamda. He saw that the physical world is unreal, but he didn't jump to any conclusion. Okay? The first experience of the self for Srivamda was only liberation. It wasn't cosmic consciousness. The cosmic consciousness came later on. Okay? So very clearly he said that no thought, no emotion, no sensation, nothing at all. Absolutely a freedom, total freedom from all limited things. So Srimji is saying that that is not the last experience. Not necessarily entail extinction of our world existence. He is not saying that the Mayavadan is wrong and the Buddhists are wrong. He is saying that that's not the only experience possible. Other experiences also are possible. Okay? So that's his contradiction to the Mayavada philosophy. For, I read the next sentence, for the Supreme to whom we assimilate ourselves. Now the word assimilate ourselves, very interesting. Okay? The word assimilate means what? Okay? Nothing. When you eat the food, it is assimilated, it is digested, it becomes part of you. Okay? So if you are experiencing the Supreme and to whom we assimilate ourselves, become one with Him. Very interesting word is using, see? We assimilate ourselves. The use of word by Srimad is so interesting. Okay? So, when you become one with the Divine, the Absolute, the Transcendent, into whom we enter, has always the complete and ultimate consciousness for which we are seeking. And yet, He supports by it His play in the world. So, He is the Transcendent is manifesting the world, and not only manifesting, but comes into everything. Okay? He manifests it and Himself comes and dwells in every form of the universe. Even in stones and trees and animals and human beings. Everywhere He is there. Neither are we compelled to believe that our world existence ends because by attaining to knowledge, its object or consummation is fulfilled and therefore there is nothing more for us here afterwards. So that's a normal Indian interpretation for a long time. Now Srendra is saying it's not like that at all. After getting your liberation, you have a choice to come down to the physical world and participate in God's work, the evolution. Take the evolution forward. That's exactly what Srendra did by pulling down the supermind. He took the next step. He became the instrument for the divine next step of evolution by bringing down the supermind. So that's what he's saying we can do. The Gita also says we need not leave the physical world. You can remain in the physical world and yet be untouched by sin and ignorance and falsehood. Like the lotus leaf in water. So it's possible to do that. And so they're saying yes, it is possible. For what we gain at first with its release and immeasurable silence and quietude, that's what happens normally. You have only a release, your liberation. You are not in the body-mind life imprisoned. And immeasurable silence, note the word, huh? It is not just silence, it is the only thing that exists. Is total silence can also mean no action of any sort, complete inaction, okay? Featurelessness and quietude, calm quietude, is only the eternal self-realization, okay, by the individual in the essence of his conscious being. Okay? So he is saying very clearly, okay, for what we gain at first with its release and immeasurable is only the eternal self-realization by the individual in the essence of his conscious being. In other words, when you are in the physical world, you are not eternal. But you can experience the eternal in yourself, even in the physical world. That's what is meaning by the sentence. Okay? So I'm saying, it is only the eternal aspect. But there is also a dynamic aspect in the physical world, which is not eternal. Okay, that also is part of you. Self-realization by the individual in the essence of his conscious being. There will still remain on that foundation, unannulled by the silence. This is again a contradiction of the Buddhism and the Mayavadi philosophy. They say the world is annulled. It disappears. It's now no more necessary. But it is contradicting that. Okay? There will still remain on that foundation, unannulled by the silence, one with the release and freedom, the infinitely proceeding self-fulfillment of Brahman. Okay? The body-mind life has to be fulfilled. And that we have discussed many times. The body-mind life also needs fulfillment. We'll discuss that briefly. Because the others are saying not necessary. Body-mind life is a construction of nature. And when it is a construction, its destruction also is 100% sure. Okay? But Srila is saying no. Even the physical world can be, fulfillment can be there. So fulfillment of the mind is full knowledge. Fulfillment of the vital is full enjoyment, bliss, ananda. And fulfillment of the body is to become eternal and divine in every sense. Okay? It need not be something transient, it need not be subject to death and disease. That's the fulfillment of the body. So Swami is saying that is possible. The infinitely proceeding self-fulfillment of Brahman. Self-fulfillment is only a word, but this is what it means. Okay? Not its annihilation, not the removal of the physical world, not the rejection, but the fulfillment. Its dynamic divine manifestation in the individual, and by his presence, the divine is there, his presence is here, example and action in others and in the universe at large. So in the individual, in others and in the universe at large, the work which the great ones remain to do. Who are the great ones? The avatars, and to a certain extent the vibhutis also. Okay? They do a certain amount of limited work, vibhutis. Okay? Even yogis, they have their work to do. In one place it says, he says that the yogi sitting in the Himalayan mountains is very often doing more useful work than someone in the physical world inventing the mobile. That I am saying. He doesn't say mobile. But a person who is doing physical work and doing good work physically, but it may be less important than what the yogi is sitting on the Himalayas and spreading his influence of power, knowledge into the physical world. Okay? That can be much more important. Our dynamic, the great ones, he has put G-cat, K-cat. He means the avatars. Yes, Archana, you are saying something?
Yeah. I think this is from Thoughts and Affections, in which Sherwin says that who can say that the revolutions in all over the world is not due to some yogi sitting in the Himalayan caves.
That's what I'm referring to.
In Thoughts and Affections.
That's right. That's what I'm referring to. Okay. Our dynamic self-fulfillment cannot be worked out so long as we remain in the egoistic consciousness. So dynamic self-fulfillment, non-dynamic self-fulfillment is rising to the self. But dynamic self-fulfillment is remaining in the body and transforming body-mind life. That's a dynamic self-fulfillment. Okay? Because self-fulfillment for many can be only rising to the self. Whereas Ranga wants a descent of the self also into the physical world. That's what it means by dynamic. Okay? Cannot be worked because dynamism is not there in the self. It is static. So dynamic self-fulfillment, transformation of the physical world. At least individually first. Okay? Cannot be worked out so long as they remain in the egoistic consciousness, in the mind's candle-lit darkness. Now see that, it's very interesting. He says the mind is candle-lit darkness. And when you go to the self, it becomes like a broad daylight. That's what he says. And when you go to the higher intuition, illumined consciousness, it becomes like lightning. The amount of light, of knowledge that you get is like lightning. Okay? So, our present limited consciousness can only be a field of preparation. In the physical world, you are preparing yourself. You are fighting against ignorance, perversion, and suffering, and falsehood. You are fighting. You are fighting and preparing yourself for greater things. The true and divine self-fulfillment of Brahman in the manifestation. Okay? The true and divine self-fulfillment of Brahman can also be in the self, but not in the manifestation. So, in the manifestation, is only possible on the foundation of the Brahman consciousness, and therefore through the acceptance of life by the liberated soul, the Jivan Mukta. They, Mayavadi and the Buddhists, are not accepting life. They are rejecting life. But the liberated soul in the integral yoga must accept life. And is Jivan Mukta. Even when you are living in the physical world, you are free. The soul is free. Jivan Mukta. Living in the physical world, you are free. Now we go to the next one. No small paradox. This is the integral knowledge. For we know that everywhere. So, who will read? Sima has read and Jishnu has read. Now, Shilpa, can you read?
Yes. Yes. I
Okay,
can
go
read.
ahead. Go ahead. This is the integral yoga. Knowledge.
The status of knowledge, no?
Yeah, this is the integral knowledge.
This is the integral knowledge, for we know that everywhere and in all conditions, all to the eye that sees is one. To a divine experience, all is one, block of the divine. It is only the mind which, for the temporary convenience of its own thought and aspirations, seeks to cut an artificial line of rigid division, a fiction of perpetual incompatibility between one aspect and another of the eternal oneness. The liberated knower lives and acts in the world not less than the bound soul and ignorant mind, but more, doing all actions sarvakarta only with a true knowledge and a greater conscient power. And by so doing, he does not forfeit the supreme unity, nor fails from the supreme consciousness and highest knowledge. For the supreme, however hidden now to us, is here in the world no less than he could be in the most utter and ineffable self-extinction, the most intolerant nirvana.
This is the argument of the Buddhist and the Mayavadi. If you want the divine fully, you have to give up the physical world. In the physical world, you can only know him partly, but you can never know him fully. So fully you have to go only to that absolute. So this is contradicting that. So this is the last paragraph of the chapter. This is the integral knowledge. Which is the integral knowledge? That the divine at the highest level is also there in the lowest level. He is not something separated from at all from it. Okay? He is there everywhere. This is the integral knowledge. That's all. The sentence is very clear. This is the integral knowledge. You have to stress the word this. And what is this? That he is there everywhere. He is there in the transcendent, he is there in the cosmos, he is also there in the individual. For we know that everywhere and in all conditions, all to the eye that sees is one. Which is the eye that sees? The spiritual eye that sees the oneness everywhere. To a divine experience, all is one block of the divine, right from the top to the bottom. It is only the mind which for the temporary convenience of its own thought and aspiration, seeks to cut an artificial line of rigid division, a fiction of perpetual incompatibility. Perpetual incompatibility. Ranga says the incompatibility is not perpetual, it is only temporary. If you rise to higher levels of consciousness, the incompatibility disappears. That's why it's not perpetual. But those who say it is perpetual are therefore not very correct in their assessment. Perpetual incompatibility between one aspect and another of the eternal oneness. This problem is there everywhere. Some say the divine is nirguna. Some say no, he is also saguna. And the real knowledge is he is both. He is nirvana and nirguna. Nirguna as well as saguna. He is personal as well as impersonal. The liberated knower lives and acts in the world not less than the bound soul and ignorant mind, but more, doing all actions. Sarvakrit. Sarvakrit doing all actions. Krit is to do actions. Kri is the root, and Sarvakrit is one who is doing all actions. So, Srimad is saying that the liberated knower is not aloof from the world. He can do all works. Okay? You have only examples of mother and Srimad though, who working 24 hours a day. Okay? Srimad used to rest only for 2 hours, and mother never went to sleep. She used to lie down on that couch. It's not even a bed. Okay, it was a couch only. And she would, and even there, the body is resting, but she is working, going everywhere, doing whatever has to be done. Okay. Doing all actions, Sarvakrit, only with a true knowledge and a greater conscient power. And by so doing, he does not forfeit the supreme unity, nor fall from the supreme consciousness and the highest knowledge. See, Srila is giving a direct statement, but actually in so doing, he is negating, he is refuting the Mayavada theory and the Buddhist theory. And by so doing, he does not forfeit. The others say that they are forfeiting the supreme unity. Okay? And by so doing, he does not forfeit the supreme unity, nor fall from the supreme consciousness and the highest knowledge. For the supreme, however hidden now to us, is here in the world. Okay? He is there everywhere. No less than he could be in the most utter and ineffable self-extinction, the most intolerant nirvana. What does the word intolerant mean here? It does not tolerate manifestation. It rejects manifestation. That's a transcendent in one aspect. In one aspect is a chit ghana, and it rejects the manifestation and looking only inwards. The divine is not interested in the universe. He does not create the universe. He is only looking into himself and enjoying his eternal bliss and ananda. That's one aspect of the divine. And why is that aspect necessary? Because uninvolvement. When he has to make a judgment, he is completely uninvolved. Okay? Normally when we have sympathy for somebody, then we get involved with it. Even if a friend has done something wrong, we get involved with it and we don't see the wrong that he has done. We try to support him. But the divine has to be absolutely uninvolved. But that does not mean that he doesn't have any compassion and understanding of human nature. Very much so. The divine is possible for all aspects for him. But we human beings don't have that capacity, so we make divisions. But for the divine, there is no division. So that completes the chapter. And now, the status of knowledge. So what is knowledge? How many types of knowledge are there? And whether we should only stick to one type of knowledge or several types of knowledge. For instance, scientific knowledge, okay, spiritual knowledge. Okay, there are so many different types of knowledge. So, we have about 6 minutes. We can read the first one. Okay. So, Kiran, you have the text with you?
Yes, Ranga.
Okay, go ahead. The self, the divine.
Okay. The status of knowledge. The self, the divine, the supreme reality, the all, the transcendent, the one in all these aspects is then the object of yogic knowledge. Ordinary objects, the external appearances of life and matter, the psychology of our thoughts and actions, the perception of the forces of the apparent world can be part of this knowledge, but only in so far as it is part of the manifestation of the One. It becomes at once evident that the knowledge for which yoga strives must be different from what men ordinarily understand by the word. For we mean ordinarily by knowledge an intellectual appreciation of the facts of life, mind and matter and laws that govern them. This is a knowledge founded upon our sense perception and upon reasoning from our sense perceptions, and it is undertaken partly for the pure satisfaction of the intellect, partly for partial efficiency and the added power which knowledge gives in managing our lives and the lives of others.
in utilizing for human ends the overt or secret forces of nature, and in helping or hurting, in saving and ennobling, or in oppressing and destroying our fellow men. Yoga indeed is commensurate with all life and can include all the subjects and objects. There is even a yoga which can be used for self-indulgence as well as for self-conquest, for hurting others as well as for their salvation. But all life includes not even mainly life as humanity now leads it. It envisages rather and regards as its one true object a higher, truly conscious existence which our half-conscious humanity does not yet possess and can only arrive at by a self-exceeding spiritual ascension. It is this greater consciousness and higher existence which is the peculiar and appropriate object of yogic discipline.
We may not have much, we have only 3 minutes, but I just point out one thing. Okay, there is a footnote also for that. Okay, he's saying that there is also a yoga which can be used for self-indulgence as well as for self-conquest, for hurting others as well as the salvation. What the hell does it mean by that? So we read the footnote. Yoga develops power. Kiran, read the footnote. Oh, you don't have the footnote?
Yes, Rangana, I have the footnote. I'll read it.
Okay.
Yes. Yoga develops power. It develops it even when we do not desire or consciously aim at it. And power is always a double-edged weapon which can be used to hurt or destroy as well as to help and save. Be it also noted that all destruction is not evil.
There you are. Very interesting. And I'll give you a very interesting example. Okay. There was, mother had developed a lot of occult knowledge. And in one conversation, Srivastava says, mother has a lot of occult knowledge. And then he says in a very humorous way, okay, he says, I too have a little bit of knowledge. I too have a little bit of knowledge. Okay. Srivastava was using it for vast historical purposes. He was using his power in the Second World War to bring Hitler down, to destroy him. And that's what he's meaning by all destruction is not evil. Okay. So, we have to sometimes destroy the enemy. Then, I will give you one example of mother. Okay. Someone complained to mother, one disciple, that someone is hurting me with black magic. Okay. So, mother said, give me a photograph of that person. Okay. And that person gave that photograph of that person to mother. And this story has been told to me by someone who witnessed this whole thing. Okay, that's why I'm telling it to you. It was the manager in the press who was Mr. Ganguly, and he witnessed this incident of mother. That's why, and he told me this. He was surprised by it. Mother took that photograph and very seriously concentrating on that photograph, she took a pen, okay, black or a red pen, I've forgotten, and then she cut it violently across like that, put it across, and threw it on the ground. So there you are, you can hurt people also, but for good purposes. Okay? So don't think that this sentence is a very curious one. Okay? He's saying, there is even a yoga which can be used for self-indulgence as well as for self-conquest, for hurting others as well as for the salvation. So sometimes when the divine is hurting you, actually he is taking you more towards salvation. Okay? So I just point out because it's a very puzzling sentence. Okay? So that's why you must be very clear. All destruction is not necessarily evil. It is good. Okay? That can happen. And what about the tantrics? They also develop powers, but they often use it for egoistic purposes. But when you do that, you are hurting yourself. Okay? So that's fine. Okay? So today we stop now here. Next time, if necessary, we'll go through this para. Okay? And then go on to the next para. Okay. Au revoir, everybody. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Ranga.
What do I think?
Thank you, Ranga.
I'm cutting this.